dark, brooding, enigmatic, mysterious, probably owns like 12 leather jackets, or like some cool shades, or a motorcycle, probably had a troubled past, borderline abusive in his relationships, very conventionally attractive, chiseled jawline, very defined cheekbones, and the key factor, very emotionally suppressed. Hi everyone, Maya here. Thank you for tuning in. Today we are going to be talking about one of my least favorite tropes of all time, and that is none other than
the bad boy trope.
The bad boy trope has existed in our culture and permeated our media for a really long time. The first person I think of is James Dean. He portrayed the outcast, the rebel. He was very handsome. He very much conformed to Western beauty standards. The next person I think of is a fictional character, and that would be Danny from Grease, as portrayed by John Travolta. He's a T-bird. He's meant to wear his leather jacket. He's meant to slick back his hair. He is above everyone. He is superior because he is misunderstood, and he's a bad boy. Then we've got Han Solo, who is a scoundrel, and he is not morally sound. He's kind of morally gray, although we love him despite that. He thinks that all women who look at him for more than 5 seconds must be in love with him. Then we've got that one character from The Breakfast Club, whose name I don't remember because I've seen that movie once. Moving on to the more literary scene, we've got ourselves Reiko Malfoy. Very pale, very stoic, evil, even. Then we've got our Edward Cullens, our shiny vampires. We've got Hardin from After. If you want to, I don't mean to be cruel. If you want to waste your time, go watch After. It's on Netflix. But that just goes to show, that multitude of examples shows how prevalent this character is and this trope is in our culture and our media, and how it's become something that a lot of men and boys exposed to media aspire to emulate. I want to talk about how it affects boys, because I think a lot of the time people make the argument that it's bad for girls, and I completely agree, and we'll get to that in a hot second. But I think it's really damaging to young boys. Media plays a huge part in our lives. I was talking with my friend Adam about this a few months ago, and we were discussing how what you consume becomes a part of you. If you're really affected by a show, a book, a piece of music, it will change you as a person, and that is one of the most beautiful things about art. But that means that art does hold quite a responsibility to make sure that it's sending healthy messages. I will say I recently watched a video by Francina Simone. I think it's rather an old video, but she was discussing how books do not have an obligation to teach us anything. We're not meant to learn from books. Maybe no one writes a book with the intention of preaching or trying to get a message across. Maybe it's just a creative expression meant to mimic life. And maybe that's true. But at the end of the day, we are influenced by everything around us in the world. We live, and as we live, life happens to us, time happens to us, and we have experiences, and from those experiences, we gain takeaways and memories, and we relate things to one another, and those neurons just grow and grow, you know what I'm saying? And because, in my opinion, it's inevitable, young boys are going to be exposed to these bad boy characters. The reason these characters are bad for boys, and the reason this trope can be damaging, is because, in my opinion, it promotes toxic masculinity. I'm gonna read you guys the definition of toxic masculinity from handy dandy Wikipedia, just so we're all on the same page, because I feel like a lot of the time the term toxic masculinity is misused, or it's given a denotation that does not necessarily belong to it. Toxic masculinity is thus defined by adherence to traditional male gender roles that consequently stigmatize and limit the emotions boys and men may comfortably express, while statusing other emotions, such as anger. At the end of the day, toxic masculinity has nothing to do with whether or not you enjoy or like conventionally male hobbies, activities, or things. I don't mean to play too heavily into stereotypes here, but you can love things like cars and bodybuilding and still cry. But unfortunately, our culture teaches us that that is not accurate. The heart of the issue of toxic masculinity is it tells young boys that they need to be macho men. They need to be a rock in someone's life, and they are not allowed to show any emotion. They are meant to be stoic, they are meant to be observant, and they are meant to think logically. Only logically. No emotions involved whatsoever. And logic's cool, but so is compassion, you know? Teaching our boys that they must suppress their emotions strips them of an experience I think is crucial to human life, and that is feeling. You need to feel scared sometimes. You need to feel sad. You need to feel happy. You need to experience all of the range of emotions that you possibly can, because it helps you become a well-rounded human, connect with the people around you, and form meaningful relationships. By sending the message to our boys through media and through the bad boy trope that they constantly need to be stoic and can never have an emotional reaction to anything, you're denying them something that I fundamentally believe is a key attribute of the human experience. All right, now we're gonna move into why the bad boy trope is damaging for a female audience. My first reason here is that the bad boy trope teaches young girls and women that they need to fix men. People are not made out of nuts and bolts, and thus cannot be fixed easily with, say, a wrench. Quote unquote, fixing a human being often requires a lot of internal work, often involves therapy, it involves recollecting on the past and how potential traumas have affected a person. Moreover, relationships, in my opinion, whether they are platonic or romantic or something in between men and women, need to be equal. Relationships are built on respect and equality. And if the girl in this situation is constantly working on fixing her dark, brooding, enigmatic man, there's not respect there. He's treating her as a medical professional, as a therapist, and she is catering to his every need because she is convinced, she has been told by the media that this is what love is. Love is fixing someone. And that's not what love is. Therapists are paid to quote unquote fix people. They help them work through their past struggles. They help them work towards a better and a happier future. That is not a partner's job in a relationship. A partner's job is to be compassionate and helpful and supportive in every way possible, but not to fix said person. Additionally, this trope teaches girls that they cannot be whole without a man. And this is not always the case. Definitely not in Star Wars. We love ourselves Princess Leia. But right here, I'm talking specifically about Twilight. I think it's totally cool if you like Twilight. I was having a conversation with Charlotte Reeds, who is another booktuber on this here platform. I think she has a lot of insight and wonderful recommendations. I'll link her channel below if you want to go check her out. But we were talking about how a lot of the time, things that teenage girls like become the butt of the cultural joke. For example, One Direction. You get the screaming fangirl, and people are like, oh, that's so annoying. Don't they have a better way to spend their time? They're just obsessed. But when boys love football players, no one bats an eye, you know? It's a very normal thing to like things and have hobbies and enjoy elements of life. Twilight is another example that Charlotte pointed out. Twilight mainly caters to the demographic of younger teen girls or moms. I don't know if you guys remember the Twilight mom. I feel like a big part of the reason society as a whole criticizes Twilight is because that is the fan base. That being said, I still do not like Twilight, and here is why. In one of the books, I have no idea which, it was either Eclipse or New Moon, I think, Edward leaves Bella alone in the small town of Rainy Forks. Not Raining Forks. Forks is the town, and it's raining. Edward leaves, and Bella completely loses her sense of self. She stays in her room, she's crying, she's incredibly depressed. She feels like she has no self-worth, and at one point, she jumps off a cliff into the ocean. That is not a healthy relationship. And when romances such as the ones portrayed in Twilight, in which the man has complete control over the woman, and the woman feels like nothing when she's not with the man, that teaches our youth very, very unhealthy, unrealistic examples of what love ought to be. And I think that Bella, at the end of the day, is a character who let her self-worth be dictated by the men in her life. And that is not her fault at all. That happens to so many young girls and women around the world. That's not an uncommon thing, unfortunately. Moving on, I want to talk about a more broad theme of why the bad boy trope is so damaging, not only to individual sexes or genders, but also just to society at large. Often, the bad boy has had a very tragic past. Harden from After is who popped into my head because his backstory was just horrific. His family dynamic was completely twisted, and it was clear that he'd had a difficult childhood. A lot of the time in stories with a clear and prevalent bad boy trope, this childhood, this sense of trauma and the horrific experiences that the main male lead has had are used as an excuse for his behavior. And I think that romanticizes traumatic experiences in people's lives. Trauma is not a good thing. Trauma will not result in you having a flourishing love life. Trauma doesn't make you attractive. Instead, it's something that is very personal to individuals and something that requires a lot of time and a lot of internal work and quite a bit of therapy often to get through. It's not a romantic thing. To add on to that, I feel like the bad boy trope romanticizes abusive relationships. Now, this is not true for every single bad boy trope. To be clear, I'm very much heavily generalizing here, but I think it's a valid point. It is not healthy to be miserable in a relationship. Of course, they're going to have their ups and downs, but it should not be a scenario where either the man or the woman or the anybody in the relationship is feeling horrible about themselves, doubting their self-worth, feeling unhappy. Relationships are meant to be something that connect people, and connection, I believe, inherently is a good thing. So when these romances are portrayed to be dark and sometimes violent, that sends a really clear ideal, especially if girls don't have role models at home to show them what a healthy relationship looks like, which is the case for quite a few young women. These books are where they learn about what a relationship is and what it should look like. And this is not what a relationship looks like. Healthy relationships are often built on communication, and again, I'll go back to that idea of respect and equality. These are missing from the bad boy trope. All in all, I understand the appeal of the bad boy trope. It involves a lot of drama, and a lot of the time that's what people are looking for in a book. They like something that keeps them on their toes, something where the main character is sorting stuff out and the audience is able to pick a side, choose a side, team Jess, team, what's his name, Logan. But the bad boy trope is really damaging, and it's not a healthy part of our culture. I think it's unhealthy. Maybe you disagree. Totally cool. Let me know your comments down below. I love BookTube because it's a place for discussion, and that is what I hope to bring about with these videos. And with that, I will say adieu to you until Wednesday. Have a lovely day.